But my great grandfather was one of the reasons we now have the automatic crossing signs at train tracks. Because on Christmas, there was no indications, no nothing. Christmas Eve, they're driving across, don't see anything, boom, gets hit by a train. And he was like the eighth one in the last like 3 or 4 months. And so that's what really started the ball. Like, hey, maybe we should put some like crossing signs or something.
Welcome, everybody. Dr. Ron Oberstein, president of Life Chiropractic College West, and welcome to another edition of our Life by Life West. Today, of course, I'm a co-host with my co-host, Dr. Mary Oberstein. Welcome, Mary.
Hi.
And happy anniversary. We just celebrated our, how many years?
36.
36 years of happily ever after matrimony. And, people have been texting me the last day, it was yesterday, that we celebrated and saying, what's wrong? How has she kept you that long? Which I don't know. I'm not asking because I don't want to know the answer, because I just hope you keep me for another 36. But thank you, Mary. And today we have a very special guest coming at us from York, Pennsylvania, just by Amish country, I believe, up there in Pennsylvania. And we have Dr. Adam Harcourt. Welcome, Dr. Adam.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me give just for our viewers, I'll give you a little glimpse of Dr. Adam. He is a 2013 Life West graduate. He's done amazing things, which I'll tell you about in a second. In 2014, he got his diplomat in functional neurology from the Carrick Institute. He also, after graduation, went down, set up his first practice in Santa Barbara and had that rolling. And then in 2019, decided to set his second practice up while keeping his first practice in Beverly Hills, California. And right now he is in his third practice in York, Pennsylvania. So we'll get into that a little bit. He wrote a book called Mastering Migraines. And you can probably find it on Amazon. We'll ask Dr. Adam where you can get it. He also teaches a 150-hour course for the Carrick Institute, and the same thing along migraines. He's pretty much a migraine expert. But I got to tell you something really cool is he's a fourth-generation chiropractor. His great-grandfather graduated in 1923, 100 years ago, and absolutely blows my mind, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But a fourth-generation chiropractor, and we're really excited to dive into this stuff, Dr. Adam. So we're so glad we're glad you're here with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mary, I don't know. You can start. I can start. I got a million questions that I want to ask.
Well, I do too. Normally when we have like chiro kids on, I love to ask like how chiropractic found you, because a lot of the paths aren't like a direct line like people think. But being fourth generation, I just got to ask, like, did you always know you were going to be a chiropractor? Like, how did that even come about?
Yeah, no. Short answer is no. And
Okay.
my dad was always really good about it. He never pushed me into anything. And, I eventually got to the point, well, this was off topic, but before I decided on getting into healthcare, I was actually, I went to school to be a commercial diver. And so we did some diving in the Gulf of Mexico and then worked inland for a while, which was a completely different field. But that was before chiropractic. And then when I decided that I wanted to get into healthcare, I kind of shadowed everywhere. I looked at dentistry, I looked at emergency medicine. And I guess, for me, it was just growing up in that chiropractic kind of mindset that I knew I didn't like emergency medicine because I was not in love with cutting and blood, and it just wasn't my thing. And I knew it wasn't. But then when I looked at other forms of healthcare, looking at longer term care, chronic conditions, things like that, again, growing up in a chiropractic family, I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense that they're, treating this with that medicine or whatever. And so I kind of reluctantly was like, all right, I guess I'll get into chiropractic. And, but what I did find, and this was actually, everything works out, for a reason. And like, I think the first week I was at Life West, I, got introduced to Dr. Carrick and the functional neurology. And I was like, that is super cool stuff. Like I'm interested in that. And, that journey has been great because it really helped me understand chiropractic in such a more profound way and appreciate what it is that we do. So that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, and Adam, I also think probably somewhere because it's very common with chiro kids, that they don't, go, oh yeah, some know it from when they're 2 years old, and others
Mhm.
just kind of they know it's always there, so they're looking for what's different. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Totally get it. I mean, one of our daughters was two of them were very much like that, and it was just so
Mhm.
cool to watch their path. But I think with you, your great grandfather would have reached up and probably slapped you upside the head, or at least on the atlas to be able to say, "Dude, what are you doing? Carry on the tradition."
My son's in the other category. He tells everybody all the time. He's like, I want to be a functional neurologist like daddy. That's what I want to do. And I almost keep dissuading him the other way. I'm like, are you sure? Like, you're young. He's like, nope, I'm on board. All right. Well,
Wow. How old is your son?
he's 7.5. So
7.5.
actually, he does like an online charter school. So half the time he'll come into my office and he'll do school. And in the meantime, I'll have him do therapies or run my diagnostics or do whatever. So
Wow.
he knows how to run a D2 and do posturography and all this stuff. So it's a good time.
I tell you, I love those child labor laws in Pennsylvania.
Absolutely, so wonderful.
I love it. I love it. So, like, what was some of the history? I mean, obviously, you knew your grandfather, right? I would hope, but what was some of the history that you heard for like back in the days? Even
So
your great grandfather.
I got kind of crazy story for you. And I didn't even tell you this when we talked the last time. Is so my great grandfather. The reason he got into it was because of the whole flu pandemic in 1918, and that was they didn't know why, but a lot of people were doing better if they saw a chiropractor. And so all these people were getting licensed. He saw his family do well. And he goes, well, I don't know what they're doing, but it looks cool. Let's go do that. And so he set up a practice in Indiana. And he was in practice for about, I want to say 20, 25 years. I did some research on it. And he made it to about the mid 40s, I believe. And then when my grandpa got his license or his graduated, they weren't giving out any more licenses in Indiana for chiropractic at that time. I don't know why. That was sold. And so they moved east to Pennsylvania, where he set up a practice after 5 years of associating. He set up a practice in 1955 in York, Pennsylvania. And in the 80s, my dad, my grandpa, my uncles, two uncles, bought the practice from my grandpa. And they took over in like 83, 84, and he kind of semi-retired. And so then my one uncle went back to medical school. So he does both. He does like both chiropractic and medicine. And then my other one moved away. And so he's in Florida, I believe. And so my dad's, been there about 40 years now. But the practice has been there since 1955. But the craziest story, and this is a very unfortunate story, but it's from back in the 40s, so we're okay. But my great grandfather was one of the reasons we now have the automatic crossing signs at train tracks, because on Christmas there was no indications, no nothing. Christmas Eve, they're driving across, don't see anything, boom, gets hit by a train. And he was like the 8th one in the last like 3 or 4 months. And so that's what really started the ball. I'm like, hey, maybe we should put some like crossing signs or something in front of the railroad. So that's actually the main reason I never met my great grandfather.
That's amazing.
It's
Wow.
crazy. But I found that out from doing like a ancestry type thing, and you look up some newspaper articles, and it was front page news and crazy stuff. So very.
Where did he graduate from?
They all went to national. All
Okay.
great grandpa, my dad, my uncles. And when I was looking around, I really liked what Life was doing, and so I told him I was thinking about Life West. He's like, "Go there." He was like, "I like what they're doing out there." He's like, I think that's a good idea. So they all did national, but they were very encouraging of
Right.
California.
Wow. Right. And then so right now you're in Pennsylvania, and your dad's in Pennsylvania.
He's about 16 blocks away, same street.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool too, because I've been teaching for the Carrick Institute since about 2015, 2016. And I kept trying to get him into it. It's like, nah, I'm getting too old. I'm going to retire by the time I get it, whatever. And so then when I created the migraine program, I'm like, come on, like it's my program. You gotta come down. So he came down to Florida. He took the entire migraine program and loved it. He's like, this stuff is so cool. And so he started, getting insufflators and peripheral nerve stimulators and all this stuff because I was out in California. And so, he was playing around with it and stuff. And then as soon as I moved back, he's like, all right, good. I'm sending all of those people to you. You deal with it. So he does, he's been in practice 40 years. So he's an amazing adjuster, great chiropractor. And so they also have some cool technology, software stuff. And so I send a ton of chronic pain patients down to him, and they send, all their migraine, concussion, dizziness, dystonia type patients to me. So it's wonderful. It's been really fun to be back.
Wow. I feel like we need to send a crew to you and do like a 4-hour like production where you just tell stories about like your grandfather, your great grandfather. You know what I'm saying? Like you just,
well, it's really weird. The practice that he has now, the upstairs, what my entire life was my grandparents' house, like their apartment, because they retired to the apartment upstairs. And until my grandma passed away 4 or 5 years ago, that's what it was. And so, eventually they remodel it. Now they use it as office space and all that. But, I grew up playing chess with my grandpa and, those rooms. And, now it's weird to see, all this technology and modern living because, grandma from the 60s, basically, with all the old carpets and the frilly doilies and all this stuff. And, now it's all clean and nice. And so it's been an interesting kind of progression over the last 70 years or so that it's been there.
Wow.
Well, here's the cool thing, Mary. Adam will be at the college this coming quarter, speaking at Friday's seminar, probably doing a lunch. So we'll get time to get some tape with you, Adam, and we'll stick you in the museum. We have a great museum. We have Dee Dee Palmer.
Right, come on.
not for you, but for the history of your family, right? And we have Dee Dee Palmer's very first office completely reconstructed.
Really? At Life West now?
At Life West. Same carpet that he used. Exact same carpet, except that it wasn't it wasn't made then, but same exact one from the same company in Iowa, but same pattern, everything exactly the same. So yeah, we'll get that done. We'll get that done. That's exciting, man. That's so cool. Yeah. I want to shift gears for a second and kind of building practices, because obviously, you build 3 practices, right? In the span of 10 years, weathered through a pandemic, which we don't really have to talk about, but, it's like, and what I get is that, which is so cool, is that the work you do is so specialized that, you've got chiropractors referring to you, probably medical doctors referring to you, that you can take care of with chiropractic care, get their neurology, back functioning, and then, you can send them back over and, I'm sure they still stay under chiropractic care along the way, but it's just so cool. But, what were some of the struggles and triumphs, that you kind of had over the 3 practices that you set up?
Well, we're going to need a much longer podcast if we're going
to. I know. Pick a couple highlights. How's that?
I'll try to, keep it short. Well, I will say I had a huge leg up having my dad in practice for so long. And I feel like what I was able to do, even in the neuro space, there's no way without having kind of the foundation of what my dad has already kind of taught me, right? Because he'd been in practice at that point, 28, 30 years or something like that. And so everything from, how do you do day ones to how do you do reports to what do you do with insurance and like all this stuff. I had such a good kind of baseline understanding of that. That instead of having to fail a bunch of times to get that part done, he had already kind of got me to that, right? And so then when I started, I had a baseline idea of what I wanted to do. And so I started as more of a traditional chiropractic practice, even though I started as a purely neuro practice. It's just, when people see DC, the chiropractor, great. And so I did a lot more low back neck stuff. And for me, what ended up happening was I think I got a really good advice from one of my business coaches, which also was a mistake. When I first got out, I was like, well, if I'm going to get a business coach, I need to know how I can do on my own. And I'm going to wait a year and all that, which was a giant mistake because once I started working with them, things picked up so quickly because I'm not a business guy. I didn't go to business school, right? And so the insights that they had when you look back are like, duh, of course, that's how you would do things. But as a chiropractor, as a doctor, that's not where my head was at. And so I started out and, I just thought we were going to get all these patients right away, and this was going to be relatively easy. And so they gave me some good advice that said almost everyone that starts a business, whether it's a practice, they wildly overestimate what they can do in the short term and wildly underestimate what they can do in the long term. And I found that to just be true over and over and over again. Even with the new practice I have here, is if you lay the foundation and you do things properly, you're not going to start out the first month with a full book. Maybe not even the first 6 months. That's not how it goes. But if you're providing good services and you continually stay up with the work, eventually people just start showing up. It's kind of this weird, like a snowball rolling down the hill type thing. And so I will say the first year I went to every networking event I could possibly show up to. We went to breakfast in the morning. We went to happy hours at night. We went to lunch and learns during the day. Like I would just meet people everywhere. I did talks at the hospitals. And that first year I felt like, man, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm just not getting this many people. But as that kept going, now people that I talked to a year or two ago, hey, I remember you, but now I have this issue. I'm going to show up. Or, yeah, I heard about you here, but then it took the next 4 times that I saw you to end up coming in and actually using your services. So I think the big mistake a lot of people make early on is they think they're going to hustle, and it's just going to blow up. Like it will, but you got to let that snowball roll down the hill by itself. You can't just be upset when you're putting in all this work and you're not seeing results, because it's growing. It's like, I always hear the cliche, like, if you plant a seed, it'd be silly to expect an oak tree to grow in 2 seconds. Very cliche, but also when it comes to business, very true. So that was how we started Santa Barbara. And then you guys may know this handsome fellow that helped me start Beverly Hills, Dr. Perman.
Yeah,
and,
Dr. Dan, man. Dr. Dan's my man.
Yeah,
he's our functional neurologist at the Nexus Brain Center at Life West.
I'm so excited to check it out because I can't think of a better person to be in that role. He's brilliant. But I was lucky enough to start working with him pretty much right out of school. He did a phenomenal job in Santa Barbara, and so when we opened Beverly Hills, I said, "Hey man, you want to kind of run this thing?" Sure. So he did a fantastic job down there when we opened up. But even with that one, you can talk to him. For the first 6 months, I would drive back and forth to Santa Barbara about 3-4 times a week. Him and I would meet with every single doctor you can imagine: dentist, ophthalmologist, chiropractors, medical doctors, surgeons, anybody that would meet with us, we would have lunch with them. And I'll tell you, that first 6 months, again, didn't feel like anything was happening. But by the time we left, man, we didn't have enough space to get in all the people that were trying to do exams and came in from car accidents. And we had a huge attorney network, and it was just amazing. But again, that didn't happen overnight. It happened from a lot of work that just kept going, and you just do good work, right? And that's kind of eventually where you get to. Now there's ways to shortcut it. You guys, I'm sure there's business stuff for that, but that's
it's interesting too, because it's a lot of graduates. They graduate and then they get out, they get into practice, whether they're open their own like you did, or they become an associate or whatever they do, or an independent contractor, I should say. And they think like just because they have a degree on their wall that people are going to flock to them, and it's just, and they get out of the bubble, of chiropractic college, where everybody thinks the same, everyone's kind of moving in the same direction, though, they might have different strokes that they're swimming in the water, but they're all moving in the same direction. And then they realize, oh my God, it's a different world out here, but I love what you said, because if you don't put the energy in, if you don't put the time in,
never happens.
You've got it. Yeah, you've got to. The motion, that you put in, creates something that stirs the pot, and then all of a sudden, you can go out and give talks and do whatever, get nothing from it, and then out of nowhere, you get all these patients that come in, and you go, oh wow, that other stuff didn't work. Well, yeah, it did work, because you got to put the time in. It's just what it's about.
Yeah, and it used to be. When we started, it was something like 6 or 7 touches before people are interested in engaging. Now with all social media and stuff, it's up to like 11 or 12. Yep. So realistically, I would tell my associates and stuff, I said, look, you got to do all this stuff, because if you see somebody once, don't expect them to come in. I said, they need to have so many interactions with us to the point where it's like, well, I guess I got to go in now because I've seen them everywhere. Right. And so, that's why we would do so many different things, is because we wanted people that needed our services to get it, right? That was the big thing. And so we ended up, another thing for us is when I got out, like many people, I'm so excited about what we do. I can help everybody and do everything. And what you find out really quickly is if you can help everyone, no one thinks that they need your help. And it's the specificity that ended up being big. Now, not right away, because I wasn't good at this stuff right away. And so, but what I found out is, okay, I can do this one thing a little bit better, right? I'm pretty good at this. So I'm going to start marketing just to these things. And what you find out is from a patient mindset, if you have, let's say, low back pain, right? You don't want to just go to general doctor who does whatever. You want to go to the low back pain guy. That's who you want to go to. And we found that out with migraines and concussion and stuff like that. They didn't want to go to, their general neurologist or whatever. They wanted to go to the migraine guy. And so it was kind of counterintuitive for me, again, as a doctor, thinking, well, I pigeonhole myself. I'm never going to be busy enough. But the funny thing is, when you focus on one thing, you still end up getting tons of patients for other conditions.
Yeah, of course.
They will get other things. But now all the people that you really, really want to work with, now they're starting to seek you out. And that makes practice so much more fun.
Yeah.
A lot more enjoyable.
Mary,
I'm like bursting at the seams. One is like, I hope the lesson people hear, especially for this like younger generation of chiropractors, is like, when you're doing something and you think it's not working, stick to it. Because I see a lot of young chiropractors, I tried this, I tried that. And it's like, how long did you try for? And they'll go like 2 weeks.
Right.
So they're jumping from thing to thing. So hopefully with your success, what they're hearing is stick to it, get some legs on this stuff. But I have one question that's burning is, what percentage of your practice is migraine patients?
So my practice is almost exclusively migraine, concussion.
Okay.
Okay. Last week, this is one from my dad. Some lady called and she's explaining what she has, and he goes, I'm not even going to see you, like, go see him. And it turned out it was like a spasmodic dystonia case where she has, like, her SCM essentially just constantly does this, like, all the time. And so I always tell people, when you have weird neuro stuff that you're not really sure what's going on, they just kind of find their way in here. But I would say, like, today, for example, like 80% of my patients today were migraine. And on a normal week, I would say it's like 60% migraine, 30% concussion, and then 10% dizziness and other.
Yeah, but you know something, and Mary, you brought up a good point, and Adam, you just talked about that. You have a specific avatar. And I get someone comes in with other stuff. They can come in with something happening, and you're going to take care of them. But you have an avatar that you have modeled, right? And obviously taught a course on, teaches, did 150-hour coursework on it for a diplomat, and also, wrote a book on. But you have an avatar, or an avatar that is migraine, concussion, whatever, 3 things. And I think it's important because I think people get out and practice and don't really have an avatar, and also you don't have to. That's not all you take care of, but that's who you project, and that's what's in your mind, and I think that's super important because how many people just, you're migraine people refer migraine people, or you get known as that, right? And bingo, there it is. And just think of how many people you're keeping off of drugs, and I'm talking about heavy duty drugs. We're not talking about Tylenol, right?
Well, and here's why I enjoy teaching and why I try to share as much of this information as often as I can. Like yesterday, I did a 2-hour webinar with the Oregon Chiropractic Association. And I just gave them as many gems as I possibly could in 2 hours, because what I found out when I was doing the program is when you look at different disorders, the number one cause of disability in people under 50 in the entire world is low back pain, right? And chiropractors are pretty good at low back pain, right? But when you look at all the other ones, there's all these other things, and migraine was down at like 7, 8, something like that. But in the most recent survey, they go, wait a minute, there's this other condition called medication overuse headache. And they figured out that over 99% of those patients, it was from migraine medications. And so they go, wait a minute, these are the same category. So when you put those together, migraine jumps up to the second leading cause of disability in the entire world for people under 50.
Wow.
So I could work 24/7 and see 50 patients an hour and not even drop there wouldn't even be a drop in the bucket of people that need our help. And so the thing is, I always encourage people. I say, I've had a lot of students that end up kind of doing the same thing I do, where they specialize in this type of stuff. And I said, please do it and tell me what I can do to support you. Because when you look at the amount of money that is paid every single year when these people still have them, and then the ongoing, right, because it happens every year, and then the number of medications that they're taking that are so unnecessary. Because one thing you find about migraine is almost every medication they put you on for quote unquote prevention, which is what it is it's addressing a consequence of migraine, not migraine itself, right? And so they just throw different stuff at you, like, well, maybe this beta blocker will help, or maybe this seizure medication will help, or whatever. And it's just kind of like, man, I don't know. And the reality is, if you understand the pathophysiology, then the approach to it can be a lot more tailored to that person. And so you look at the US, for example, in the US alone, there's over 4 million chronic migraine sufferers, right? And chronic means more than 15 a month. Not
More than what? How many?
15 a month.
15.
15. So because a lot of people talk about chronic migraine like, oh, they've just had it forever and they get one a month. Chronic migraine has a very specific definition. It's more than 15 a month. There's over 4 million. And if you just look at people that have migraine in general, it's 38 million in the US. So there's a lot of people that need our help. And, there's my big kind of pet peeve with migraine is I found out, because I don't just teach chiropractors, we teach physical therapists and medical doctors, whoever. And what you find out is every single person that treats migraine tends to treat it for what they do and not for what migraine is.
Yes.
And so there's no good primary care doctor for migraine. And that's why, when I come out in February, I'm going to try to make the case and say, look, as a chiropractor, you should be the PCP. And whether that takes research or advocacy or whatever, we need to, get in that direction, because we should be the number one people taking care of migraine patients.
Yeah. Yeah. Mary, I got some questions, but shoot if you do.
Well, I was going to say, it's wild to think with those statistics that if like every student, I'm not saying this would happen, every student who graduated from Life West became a specialist in treating migraines, we wouldn't even make a dent. That is like scary and also just like kind of empowering in a way.
Yeah, no, agreed. And again, that's why
that's why you do what you do.
We need, and that's just in the US. I have people fly in from all over. I get so many people from Canada because one thing you find about the Canadian healthcare system is they're fantastic with black and white conditions, right? You break an arm, you put a cast on, you got an infection, you take antibiotics. They're great, right? But when you get out to like what I call the gray area conditions, it's not set up for that. They're not good at that. And so we have a ton of people from, like, I've had people over from London and from Abu Dhabi and from Canada and all over. And again, I'm talking just numbers in the US. So now if you're practicing in Canada, whole nother market. If you're practicing in UK, whole nother market. So they all need help too.
Yeah. And Mary, I'm going to expand that, because forget about Life West. If every chiropractic student right now, 12,000 students are roughly right now, were to, specialize in that, we still would be a drop in the bucket. Like literally. I mean, it's just like you talk about a pandemic, man. This is like it's nuts. And I didn't know that. I didn't know it was the number one leading cause, of work disability.
After low back pain.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, low back pain, and most chiropractors will tell you this. We're great with it. It's freaking boring. That stuff is like, it's like, spend your whole day with low back pain. I mean, people will leave and then they're gonna come back with low back pain. But you get people with what you're talking about. They'll do what they don't forget what it's like, especially chronic. I had no idea. 15 a month. I had no idea. To me, that's more than chronic. That's acutely chronic.
I mean, the majority of my patients are having 15, 20, 30 migraines. That's almost every.
Adam, if I could ask you a question, and I know this might be a little bit off the cuff, but if you had like, 15 seconds to answer this, because I only want one thing. What would be the number one kind of cause that you see? I know there's a trillion of them, but what would be the major, if I was to say, pick the major one that cause for migraines?
Well, no, there is only one cause. It's genetic. And so we spend 25 hours going over the full pathophysiology. But the reality is, when you really look down to it, and this is still somewhat controversial, but when you look at it, it comes down to this, is they've identified about 53 different genes that are associated with migraine. They keep looking for the magic one. It's not there. What you find is, out of all those 53 genes, they all control ion channels, right? Or basically the ability for the neuron to maintain its negativity inside, because your regular neuron should be negative 75, negative 70, whatever. And in every single migraine case, one or multiple of those ionic channels are disrupted. And so what happens is you have certain areas in the brain that the resting membrane potential in those neurons gets closer and closer to the threshold and becomes what we call hyperexcitable. And so now you have too much stress, whether it's musculoskeletal stress, emotional stress, hormonal stress, nutritional stress, whatever it is, and it stresses that pool of neurons out too much. It becomes hyperexcitable, it fails, and you get symptoms. So if that's going on in one of the areas of the brain that inhibits head and face pain, well, then when that fails, you get head and face pain. But if it's going on in the area that controls dizziness or balance, well, now you have vestibular migraine. If it's in the area that controls vision, ocular migraine. If it's in the area that controls sensory information, hemiplegic migraine, right? So it's the exact same problem. It just happens in different areas of the brain. And so what we did is we said, wait, well, we can't fix the genes, right? You can't do that at this point. So what else can we do to make those pools of neurons more negative? And what you find out is that the majority of what makes a neuron negative is protein. Protein is negative. And how do you get more protein? Through stimulation. Okay. And so this is why migraine can be so frustrating, is because the things that can be beneficial for that patient, if you do too much of it, will bring on a migraine. So perfect example, I get people all the time that come in from, and they almost didn't want to come in and see me. They said, man, I went to a chiropractor, they adjusted me, I got a migraine, I'm never going back. And I tell them, I look right out and I go, that's great. And they're like, what? And I go, no, that's awesome, because it tells us that that pathway directly involved and directly stimulated the areas that we need to strengthen in your brain. It was just a little bit too much at this time. It's kind of like if you had a broken ankle, yeah, I want you to be able to run 10 miles, but that's not going to be the first exercise I give you, right? And so then we start off with lower form, like maybe arthrostim, impulse, activator adjusting, and we work our way up to when I can actually adjust, say, an upper cervical segment, and they tolerate it, they do well, they feel great. You're awesome. You're going to be in great shape. But knowing that that is how migraine works helps you to kind of navigate what modalities you use and how much of them to use.
Yeah. Hey, I got to do a plug, man, and just for all of our viewers, Adam teaches at Life West. He teaches neurology. Doing it, you're an adjunct teacher. He teaches an online course, and this is what we're trying to do: bring these experts in, like yourself, to teach and show the functionality of what they're learning neurologically, so they can, take 1 + 1 and have it equal 2 instead of having it equal 3,400. They don't even know how it got there, man. Adam, it's amazing. And I told you from the beginning, before we even got on this, it's gonna go very, very quickly, and we're already like over our time threshold, which I'm thrilled about, because it's phenomenal. I've got an idea, and I think what we need to do, I know you do that 150-hour course, but I think we need to put together a CE course, that an online CE course around this. So when you're out and when you're at the college, we're going to sit down and talk about that. Besides putting you in the D.D. Palmer office, the original office at the museum, where we're gonna put a tape on you and have you talk about your grandparent, your great grandfather, your grandfather, your dad, and you. By the way, you got a picture. Show them that. Show our audience that picture.
This was a gift from my dad when I graduated. It was me, and then my dad, my grandpa, and then that's my great grandpa there. So
4 generations. I love it. It's just incredible.
Cool present for this is about 10 years old now. So
I love it.
Well, I can't wait to see the picture of your son holding the picture of you holding the picture.
Number 5, baby. Number 5.
Before I moved back here, I helped my dad out for like a week, and we have a picture of my son holding that picture on the couch, and my dad.
Oh, I love it.
So
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, we have reached our witching hour, but we don't let any guest leave our Life by Life West without answering these 2 questions. And I know you don't know what they are. What we're going to ask you is, we just want no more than a 30-second response, probably a 15, because we want it to be the first thing that pops up in your head to kind of be there. So, Mary, you want to start?
I'll start. Okay. With all of your vast knowledge and wisdom that you have now, if you could go back to Adam, just starting first quarter at Life West, and you could talk to him, what advice would you give him now?
Ooh, yeah, that's a great question.
First thing that pops up.
Just knowing what you know.
Yeah, man. I think the main thing, I would go back to what we talked about earlier, is don't focus on the short-term outcomes of what you're doing. Focus on the long-term goal of what you're trying to do. because that's what keeps you on track and keeps you moving forward. So I think there was a lot of times where you feel like, man, I can't make rent like next month, and how this is never going to work and whatever. But when you zoom out and you say, what am I here to do? It keeps you going.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful answer because,
Great answer.
they can't see that far. I mean, they can only see the tip of their nose, but there's a trust factor in there, right? And that trust factor is just, you are here for a reason, and it is going to work out if you just stay true, to what you want to do. All right, my second question.
Yeah.
I got the second question. That is this. Very similar. Dr. Adam sitting right now in York, Pennsylvania, but now you get to speak to Dr. Adam Harcourt, who just graduated from Life West.
Okay.
What one piece of advice would you give that Dr. Adam?
Just graduated. So I think I would tell him to try. The first thing I would tell him is get a lot more specialized and figure out what you want to do as fast as humanly possible. Doesn't mean you have to be an expert right away, but figure out what you enjoy treating and what you're good at treating. Because when you put those two together, you're going to love practice. When you see people on the sheet that morning, you're like, oh, shoot, this person's coming in, that person's coming in. It really drains the life out of you. But when you're like, oh, I'm so excited to see these people. They're doing awesome. I love what I do. I mean, you can go forever. So find what you're good at. Find what you can treat really well. Focus on those things.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, gang, we can keep going forever. I'm telling you. But that's awesome. So thank you. Thanks, Adam.
And Adam, I was going to say before Ron closes up, thank you for teaching, because you could have chosen not to teach and just do what you're doing and affect so many people. But thank you. I know it's probably not easy in your schedule because you have a family and practice.
Yeah.
Thank you for teaching the students and the chiropractors, because I mean, that's how we're going to really change health. And you've inspired me because I want to go back into practice. And and when you said that, it kind of hit me today of just like, find the thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And I think I get more out of it than the students do. So I love it.
I believe that.
All good instructors, all good teachers in life they get more, than they give, right? And then the student gets more, and that's how it's a win-win, But I do love that because takes me back to City Slickers with Billy Crystal, and when he's asking Jack Palance about what is it, and he goes, "It's the one thing," the one thing. Yep. And the one thing I got to do right now is shut this podcast down, as much as I don't want to. This webcast. Hey, thank you, Adam. I really appreciate it. And Mary, of course, every week, we're doing these, and I appreciate you so much. And to our viewers, thank you. Thank you for being with us, week in and week out. Everybody knows that we drop the Life by Life West, once, on a week, and the opposite week is the Life Leadership Line. So these Life by Life West come out twice a month, and the leadership lines come out twice a month. But thank you for spreading it, sharing it. There are people who need to hear this, especially on the migraine stuff, on the non-chiropractic side, who need to know that, chiropractic, what it can do, and they got to find that specialist who can help them to get them off the drugs and get them functioning at a much higher level. The other piece is, for us to get that one thing, whatever it might be. I think there's a lot of jewels that were dropped today. So, but thank you for being with us, and constantly, we get messages all the time of what you love and thanking us, and really thank you, because, we wouldn't be doing this if you weren't getting anything out of it. And just keep spreading the love, man. Spread everything that you got, but make sure you spread the message of chiropractic and let people know there is a way to optimal health, and that's, through the nervous system, and that's, with chiropractic care. So we love and appreciate you. Until we come at you again with another Life by Life West, for Dr. Adam, Dr. Mary, and myself, we'll bid you goodbye, and keep loving those around you, hugging those around you, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.